Hello everyone and welcome. So today I'm going to take you through the process of how I take an abstract background and turn it into a surreal painting. So let's get into the background. So first of all, I have been experimenting a lot with kind of this nebula, cloudy background and trying to find the best method of doing this for the series that I'm working on right now, which is kind of a cosmic series, and I'm probably going to start working on some of the signs of the zodiac as well, but that is more of a futuristic thing. So what I wanted to do was kind of create this smoky, cloudy background, and I started off with a gessoed black canvas, an 18 by 24, and then I went in with acrylics, but I'm using golden open acrylics because I really wanted to have a misty vibe to it, and so I'm using the golden open acrylics in just titanium white and creating more of a monochrome smoky background to begin with. So after I let that dry completely, I went right into oils. I've really been working a lot with oils lately and kind of pushing some of the color boundaries that I normally would neutralize a lot of colors and I wouldn't work with super bright colors, but I really want to play with this technique of glazing and then adding titanium white on top of the glazes and kind of creating a lot of light within the painting. So after I did all of the glazing and while the glaze was still wet, I went in with my titanium white and then started kind of creating these really bright patches and cloud effects and using the makeup brush and creating some different cloudy effects. Now I did glaze darker colors into the black as well, so when you add titanium white to that, you can get these really nice kind of soft, subtle colored clouds. And not really knowing what I was going to do with it afterwards, I just wanted to have some fun with some paint and see what I could create. Well, look at that. It's the bust of Neptune. And this was created by French sculptor Lambert Sigisbert Adam. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name. But this is one of my favorite sculptures, and it's actually one that I've painted before. I used to do sketches on the canvas directly, and then I would paint the focal point and the background simultaneously, which was really cool, but it took a really long time to do because I had to figure out color schemes and it was a little bit more challenging, especially when you're working on a white canvas. However, this process, all the colors that are in the background can be utilized to create the colors of the focal point. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using the background in order to determine what colors I am going to use within the sculpture. Now, I did want this sculpture to look a little bit more lifelike, so I made the eye actually look more like an eye than a statue eye, because sometimes statue eyes are just kind of creepy looking. And I wanted it to look more like the god that was, coming out of the sea and making it look a little bit more lifelike, but still creating that dreamy effect that I had working with the background in the first place. So just using the oil glazes in order to establish the light and the shadow, and using the background in order to kind of figure out, okay, there are the midtones that are right there, and I can put the shadows in with the glazes and then move on to opaques. And once I moved on to the opaque oils, then it was actually pretty easy to construct all of the highlights on the face and play off of some of the other colors in the background, bringing some of those warmer tones into the facial features and also making him look a little bit more lifelike. And really what it comes down to is I'm just kind of layering brushstrokes next to each other in order to create the form and making it look a little bit more three-dimensional. But what an easy process when the colors are already established for you to work with within your background. And it makes the layering process a lot easier. You don't have to use as much paint on these layers because you already have paint on the canvas. So this is really the third layer of paint when it comes down to it, because I had an acrylic layer, then an oil layer, and now I'm putting on a third layer of oil paint. This process also makes it a lot easier to create layers of hair. So you have your glazes, which are still wet underneath, and then you can start adding a little bit of a darker shade of opaque on top of that, and finally with highlights, and just using your brush strokes in order to create those kind of floating hairs, like it's either underwater or kind of in space where there's no gravity. So This was really kind of cool, and I loved the effect of the hair because you already have that light and shadow, and then just putting those finishing highlights on there. And the same thing went for the beard. So with the beard, it was kind of working with those purples and those blues, and then using titanium white with a couple of different warmer shades of blue on top of that because the background was in cools. So to give that dimension, using the cooler blues like Prussian blue, and then adding ultramarine blue or phthalo blue on top of that, and then titanium white, and finally radiant white for the brightest highlights. And this is a wet on wet technique. So really what I'm doing is I am just continuing to layer on top of the wet colors and adding the highlights. So I'm working from the darkest colors to the lightest colors, and then it came to the background. Now, I wanted him to have something that he was actually looking at, and just for the record, I don't paint boats. It's really nothing that I've ever done before, but I thought he is the god of the sea, and maybe if I created kind of this dream-like sailboat floating in a cosmic sea in the background, that might actually be pretty cool. Once I got into it, I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if this was the best idea ever because I don't paint boats. Like, I had to look at sailboat references and then sort of like make one up that was a little bit more simplistic because like I said, I don't paint boats. So I went in and I was like, okay, well, this is looking all right. It's looking a little bit cheesy at the moment, but maybe if I put some sunlight coming behind it and then I create some clouds and make it look like really kind of cosmic clouds coming out and almost like this divination bubble. Like, you remember in The Little Mermaid where Ursula had this bubble where she could see what Ariel was up to and she could kind of see what was going on somewhere else. So I was like, well, this is kind of that same sort of concept where it's like, oh, well, maybe he's looking at a ship that has someone that he cares about on the ship, and probably some mortal woman that he wants to keep an eye on or something like that. And so yeah, it kind of created a little bit of a story in my mind, but what ended up happening was this kind of cool surreal painting, but it was all based on the colors that were in the background, and then just continuing to put in some of these subtle details, and then it was pretty much finished. So yeah, that's the finished painting. If you would like to see the whole entire, there's about 4 videos of real-time painting on Patreon where I do this sort of paint and chat and go through all the steps as I do them. And if you'd like to see that, head over to my Patreon. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think in the comments of the painting. And I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.